How do you create a function when you don't know how many things you're going to pass to it? Use args and kwargs. Imagine if we want to create a function that prints some scores, for example. So we know we're going to get some scores and we just want to print them in a certain way. So we're going to have more than one score, so we're just going to use a for loop. And then we're just going to print the scores. Now that seems straightforward. Now if we were to create a list, for example, of scores, let's just create them simply, and then we just call the function print scores. So that seems quite straightforward. We run that and then we have our scores. Now if we want more scores, we can just keep creating lists and calling that function. So we might have scores 1 and scores 2 and scores 3, and these may have different amount of scores in them, for example. Now the problem with this, as you can see, is every time we're going to create scores, we're creating more lists. So this isn't really ideal. It does work though. So if we don't want to keep creating lists, we could use tuple, but then tuples you can't change, and maybe we change the scores. So is there a way that we can just call this function and give it some scores, and we don't actually know how many scores there's going to be, but we're just going to pass it. Now if we just try this, it's not going to work because we're looking for one argument given to the function. But there is a way, and this is called dynamic arguments using the arg method. So we don't need to use args, but let's just put that in so it's easier to understand. So when we print scores, we can print as many scores as we like, as many times as we like, obviously. So we can just pass as many as we like whenever we like. So we can create the function at the beginning of our coding, not needing to worry about how many scores there are. Now the word args, A-R-G-S, isn't important. So we could go back to our original scores, and this works with this asterisk here, and that's a dynamic argument. So that's a way that we can pass multiple amounts of arguments to a function without declaring how many there are to start off with. Because we don't need to know how many arguments there are when we create the function, we can create functions such as, let's say, calc average. So then we have our scores, and we're going to return so we need to import statistics, and then we're going to get the, let's import statistics as stats, and then return stats.mean of the scores. So here let's take out this and put calc average, and then we can print out average. So let's run that, and our average is 3. So if we were to do something a bit more complicated, we can put in our numbers and we can see our average, and it doesn't matter, we can just keep adding scores and it will calculate the average. So that's a way of creating a function and not worrying about how many parameters that we're going to take, we're going to pass when we call the function. So we can see here, this is the way that we've packed the arguments together. Now the opposite of that would be to unpack. So imagine if we have our function and we're going to print scores, and in this example we've just got 3 scores, and we're going to print them and what we want to do is we already have our scores and we want to print these scores. Now because we've just got a list, if we run that, then that one again will be an error because we've passed one thing and it's expecting 3. But we can unpack that list, and because there's 3 values, it will unpack the 3 values into the 3 arguments. So that prints our list. So that's the reverse of what we've done before. Before we had many things, packed them together into one tuple and then printed them. In this example, we've got many scores and it's in one list, and that one list is then unpacked. And if it's the same amount of arguments, in this case 3, then we can use that when we pass the parameters to the function print scores. We've seen this unpacking before when we used zip. So just as an example to show the unpacking using a zip, here's an example we've created already. So we've got a list of tuples of scores, and we can, if you like, unzip or unpack this zip into names and scores and then print the names and then the scores separately. So that's using this star notation, if you like, to unpack or unzip in this case. Our final example uses range, and we can see here we've created the start to finish 1 to 10, and we use a for loop with range, and here we're going to unpack that start to finish of 1 to 10 and use it in range. So when we run that, we've got 1 to 9. So we can see in range, where we would normally have 1 and 10 in the brackets, we can unpack the list values to use in range as well. So that's just an example of unpacking and how you can use it in different scenarios. So what about kwargs? Well, here we can define a function, any function, 1, and we use 2 stars, and we've got kwargs, and let's see what type we've got when we use kwargs. So we're just going to pass a simple, just let's say a equals 1, and see what happens. Here you can see we've got A1. It looks like a dictionary, so we can see if we print that. In fact, we have got a dictionary. So we would want something like for ij in kwargs dot items, and then print inj. So let's try that. So A and 1, so we could have B equals 2, C equals 3. Again, you can see we can choose as many arguments as we like, and we can pack them together with kwargs rather than args. you can name this anything you like. It doesn't necessarily need to be kwargs, so you could call this anything and that anything is something that we can iterate over and print all of the arguments. So a bit like args, kwargs, instead of using a tuple, uses a dictionary. So rather than just single values, here we've got like paired values that you would have in a dictionary. And to finish off, we've got an example where we use the kwargs to unpack. So here the function printer has ABC, the dictionary has ABC keys, and the three scores are then passed to the printer function and it prints 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the exercises. Exercise 1, create a function called PRScores that prints any amount of passed scores. So it could be integers or floating points. Exercise 2, be careful with this one, amend that function so it prints the scores in order. So highest first, then going down. Exercise 3, unpack a list of scores, pass them and print them. Exercise 4, unpack a dictionary of scores, pass them and print them. Exercise 5, pass names and scores to a function and print them. Okay, let's have a look at the solutions. Exercise 1 is straightforward. So in normal English, we pass some scores, we put it into the function, and then we can print them in a for loop. So there's our scores. That's exercise 1. Now, what about exercise 2? Now, exercise 2, we're going to have to print the highest score first. So we can print maximum of scores and then we print that. That's just going to print the highest score. So how do we reduce this tuple to print the next highest? Well, we can't change a tuple. We can't use remove. So if we had, say, scores dot remove, let's say x was the highest, so let's make x equal max of scores, and then we're going to print x. So that seems like it's correct, but we'll get an error because we haven't got a list, we've got a tuple. So that was a slight difficulty in our question. So what can we do? If we really wanted to do it, we could just say scores equals list of scores. So we change it to a list first. We also need to change the for loop so we can use for length of scores. So we want in range of length of scores, so it prints the 3 values. So then we've got, so for print I in range, so we print x, we remove x, and let's run that. So now we've got our scores in reverse order. If we add another score, for example, we can see we can add as many scores as we like, and then that will print them in that order. So that's a bit of a trick question. You can't remove or pop from a tuple. So in this example, you had to change the tuple to list. We can change that for exercise 3. So let's say our scores is a list, and we've got, let's say we've got 5 scores, and we've got to print A, B, C, D, and E, and we can print them. And we can say printer, and we use the asterisk again, and scores, and when we run that, we can see we've got our scores using the unpacking method. That was the solution to exercise 3. Now originally in exercise 4 we wanted to pass a dictionary of names and scores, but each dictionary would have to become the name of the variable, so it becomes a bit complicated. So to simplify it, we're just using the A, B and C, which we used in the example, and the kwargs, the 2 asterisks, and we print that, and then we have our 3 scores for exercise 4. Now in exercise 5 we want to print the scores of the 3 people, and here we have used the names. You can see the names are actually variable names. We've used the names of the people with the variables, so not ideal, but we can pass them to the function, use the kwargs again, and now we print that, and we print the names John, Mary, Abe and their scores. So that's the solution to exercise 5. What would you like to see next? Leave a comment and let us know. Now we're making a lot of videos at the moment, so if you want to be notified, click that bell. So please subscribe, please like and please follow our videos.